3 defeats away from home. They haven't won away from home all season, Liverpool. They've lost more games than they did in the whole of last season. Darren, how many things are going wrong for them?
Everything. You'd have to say right now, the biggest thing, inconsistent. As you said it there, put an unbelievable performance in against the champions, and then they go to the team that's at the bottom of the table, and they can't string 2 passes together. Jurgen Klopp, he's trying. You've seen him try different tactics. Obviously, injuries have not helped in the attacking options, but they just can't seem to get it right. The middle of the park, they're off it. There's no real intensity there. They don't really get after anybody. I think the drop-off in Salah's form as well. The balance of the front 3, that's off. You saw him at the weekend play down the middle. He doesn't want to play there. He's wasted down the middle. Obviously, Diaz has been out. People don't like to hear it, but Mane's no longer there. So the balance of that front 3 again, that's off. Virgil van Dijk's having that little bit of his standards are not quite where they were, and they're getting punished every single time. So at the minute, he's got to find a way of getting this team playing. But first and foremost, they need to find consistency. But what might help them this season is that I think the whole league's inconsistent. Other than Arsenal at the minute, you'd have to say the whole league's inconsistent. So they might find themselves on this horrendous run, but they string 2 wins together. They're on the verge of top 4 again. So it's not all doom and gloom, but we're not used to seeing this from a Liverpool side.
The problem they've got, Darren, in my opinion, is that they've won the league. They've been there, won the Champions League, always gone deep in that competition, always challenged Man City. It's almost, we're early in the season, but it's gone. It's gone. They're not going to win the Premier League this year. The motivation and the drive of these players, it's about what can we go for, what can we fight for? Do we want to fight for top 4? Now, the club would say, well, we take what's on offer, lowest hanging fruit. If that is it, if it's Champions League, we cannot be out of the Champions League. But as a player, you know, when you fought for the title and you're going right to the end, right to the wire, and all of a sudden that's taken away from you so early. And I know there's a lot of points to be played for, but, I mean, they're not stupid, these players, and nor are the fans, and certainly not as Jurgen Klopp. He's looking at the league and he's looking at City and how they're playing. If it was Tottenham up there or Arsenal who haven't done it, you would think, well, we can fight this, but they brought in Haaland as well on top of everything, and it's almost like rubbing salt in the wounds. I think it's very difficult for them. I don't think, it's going to be a statement, I don't think Jurgen Klopp's there next season. I think there's a conversation to be had. I'm not sure Jurgen picks them up from where they are now and makes some challenges again. I really don't, unless possibly they win the Champions League, which they're capable of.
Why do you think he couldn't pick them up?
Well, history says that he doesn't do that. I mean, he's very good and he drives and he takes the teams to where he thinks he can get the most out of them. There's not really a drop-off. If this is consistent where we think they might drop off to outside of the top 4, it's going to be a fight to get in there at the moment. I think they still might do it. They're capable. They've got the players to. He keeps talking about the injuries, what they've got. Everyone has injuries, Jurgen. You know, stop looking for excuses. You played Nottingham Forest at the bottom of the league. You should beat them with your B team. You know, you lost a lot of games where you should have won the games. Fulham, for instance, you draw. You know, you got to beat these sort of teams. No matter what the injuries, if you're playing against the Man Cities and you've got a few injuries, then an excuse. They've got a brilliant result, as Darren said, against them. Easy to pick yourself up when you're playing Man City. When you go again and you've got to pick yourself up to go and play a team who's been promoted to the league, everyone's beating. Difficult to motivate yourself when you're not going for the title. They're not going for the title. But someone has to get into their head. It's important this club is in the Champions League next year, because otherwise they'll find themselves out of it, and then it's a rebuild, a total rebuild.
The only thing to say is that in lockdown season, when they only just made it into the top 4 with like 2 games or 1 game to go, I think, till the end of the season, the next season they came back and they finished just behind Manchester City, got to a Champions League final. There was a step up then. Obviously, that coincides with fans coming back into the ground and how much they can kind of draw on that energy. But does it feel as though this is the end of a cycle, or is it, as Tim's saying, which they can't come back from under Klopp, or is it a period of renewal, rejuvenation?
I think you're both right. I think it does feel like the end of a cycle. I more think in relation to some of the players rather than Klopp. I think Liverpool would be absolutely crazy to get rid of Klopp.
I don't think they get rid of him. I'll put that straight. I think there'll be a conversation had to say, perhaps you've taken us as far as you can, and Jurgen might say the same to them and go for a new challenge. It's just my hunch. When I look at him at the moment, I just feel like that's going to be. I'm not suggesting they're sacking. No, sure. And they'd be mad. You'll be right.
Didn't the Liverpool board say that they were surprised because he extended his contract, didn't he? And they said they were surprised. They were planning for him to go at the end of this season. Was that or was it the end of next season? His contract was up.
The end of
next season.
Probably when Stevie Gerrard's ready. That's gone a bit wonky.
But I think as far as Klopp is concerned, there are so many things he's changed about Liverpool away from the pitch. The mentality, the ethos, the standing, the way that they're perceived from outside the club and around the Premier League and around Europe. They're a superpower again. And I just think if you lose him, you lose all of those things. You might bring another manager in who can do the job, but can you get another manager in who can connect with the club and the community that surrounds it, and the passion and so many very, very intricate things that he has managed to connect with during his time at the club. But for me, I think that some of the players at the club have reached the end of the line. There are players who are injured, who are always injured, and I wonder if a decision needs to be made, not just about them, but in terms of the recruitment. You know, do we now have to look at players whose injury records are better?
But again, that's something that's put on Klopp and his staff, is that there are lots of soft tissue injuries. There are lots of injuries that could be put down to overplaying. There's a lot made of the fact of how much they ran, how much they were put through in pre-season. When you look at the Liverpool players who were out, I mean, obviously you can't do anything about an ear infection. You can't do anything about a bad challenge that comes in. That's certainly not got anything to do with your preparation.
Example,
but
Keita's been injured a lot.
Yeah.
Matip has been injured a lot. Thiago arrived with a really bad injury record. And Bayern don't let top players go if they can help it. You only have to look at the fight they had to eventually allow Lewandowski to be prized from their grasp, and it goes to Barcelona and scores goal for fun. Darwin Núñez should be stupidity after he got sent off against Crystal Palace, because he could have gone on a run that would have really seen him be able to kind of score the goals to help them out of this difficult situation. But I think you're right. I think that there has to be a review of all of these things at the end of this season, because it's a cycle that one of the parties has come to the end to. I don't think it's necessarily Klopp. I think it's the players. But I hear what you're saying. Listen, just one more point. I remember when people were saying about Pep, that he doesn't stay at clubs for very long, and when they were going through a difficult time around this period last season, I think they got smashed up by Leicester at
4-2 at Etihad, yeah.
Yeah, 5-2, yeah. And people said, oh, you know, has he come to the end of the road? And can he do it without a striker? And all of these things. And he did. You know, 96 goals he scored, and they won the title, you know, by a street, and then they regenerated and added Haaland. So,
don't let the truth get away.
Exactly.
I think January at the end of the season will be important for Klopp and his recruitment, because as you're saying there with the injuries, I think they need to.
It's still annoying him, isn't it? It's still annoying him.
But the point is, the
point is the same.
The point is the same. But as far as City are concerned, you could look at City, you can look at Liverpool, and you can see two clubs that need the guys who are in control, because their profile's gone up, the calibre of player they're attracting has gone up, the intensity of the two teams. I don't think anyone else brings that same intensity to Liverpool that Klopp does.
Two things, what you're saying. Jurgen Klopp, I'm not sure he looks at his team or squad in the same way Pep would have looked at his when they're behind. I think Pep would always have firm belief that they could get him out. I'm not sure Jurgen looks at his squad like that anymore.
I agree. This is what I mean about all of the injuries and stuff.
Never hear Pep criticising his team or standing there in disbelief that they can't produce the goods. And the other thing is, with the recruitment, is Michael Edwards still not really been replaced, you know.
Julian Ward's
it'd be very interesting what Julian does in the transfer market, and if he's working hand in glove with the manager, he needs to, because their recruitment has never been a scattergun approach. It was always been very structured, and they go out and get what they need. You know, Van Dijk and Alisson.
He was
are a great
more
example.
in the negotiation, which is actually getting the players that they wanted. So the people who targeted the players and the people who would be part of that playing conversation are all still in place, but the negotiator has gone.
We can all see a good player, especially the players they're looking for. Everyone sees that. It's about getting them over the line. That's the hardest bit, and they've lost one of the best in the business at that.
Yeah, the difficulty is that there was lots of talk linking them with Jude Bellingham, and then suddenly the likes of, if Manchester City are interested, if Real Madrid and Liverpool can't compete with Liverpool aren't struggling financially, but they can't compete with nation-owned clubs and with a Real Madrid who have all that, that support despite their recent financial issues.
And on top of that, part of the problem is that Liverpool, when they got Alisson, they could afford to wait for him because the other clubs weren't where they are now, you know, and so they were able to wait and they got him. When Van Dijk arrived, he arrived in the January, but in the preceding few months they were losing games they should have won. And lots of people were saying there must surely be a defender out there that can improve the side rather than waiting for Van Dijk. But they waited and he arrived and had a transformative effect on the team. I don't think they can afford to wait right now because Spurs are stronger, Arsenal are stronger, United are resurgent at the moment, Chelsea are stronger, so they can't afford to wait. But as you rightly say, Real Madrid, they've got Tchouaméni already. They're going to go for Bellingham, and if they go for Bellingham and add him to an already amazing team with Rodrigo and Vinicius Junior and so many others, if you're Bellingham, you've got a really difficult
That's why they have to finish inside the top four, because if they don't finish inside the top four, they've got no chance of getting the players like Bellingham and these players that they're linked with. So I think it's going to be a big window in January, I think, after the World Cup, see what happens, and at the end of the season. But when you are competing with Manchester City, you can pretty much, the best team, one of the best teams on the planet, if not, and they can pretty much pick and choose whoever they've wanted, and you've been level pegging for so long, and then you see them add Haaland, and you're thinking, right, we're just about hanging on to the top four.
But Darren, do you think that City, there's such a good squad, if they come knocking for you, do you think to yourself, am I going to get a game?
But they do. City players do get a game, don't they? Because although it's a good squad, it's quite a tight squad.
Do they get a regular run of games in so much as there are players at Liverpool and even Real Madrid who would say, I know I'm going to play every week. It's not necessarily the case.
I'll give you a good example of that.
I've got 80% of them, though.
Yeah, Fabian Delph I had obviously at Villa. If he would have stayed with me, he would have played every minute of every game.
There you go.
Yeah, OK, so I spoke to him since and he's quite pleased that he went to Man City. He's got a few medals there now. You know, so when he's got them grandchildren, he can show them the medal. Whereas at Villa, he might be showing he could have shown him his appearances. But
on the flip side, and you know, that does kind of knock the argument into a cocked hat. But did he play a lot for those medals?
He did. Well, he played. He knew he weren't going to go there and play every game, but he certainly played. In one season, he played like over 30 games at left back. You know, we know our left back is at Man City. It's a midfield player. He was perfect for it. But Pep just fitted him into the team when he needed to. And the rest of the time, he was restricted via injury. But he still played enough to get the medals. And I think that he was pleased that he took that leap rather than play every game at a team that's not going to win it.
Well, they play so many games at that top level, don't they? Champions League. They always go deep into the League Cup, FA Cup, and the Premier League. Whoever they can get will get more than enough 30+ games in whatever competitions over a season.
So if you're Bellingham, you'd still go there rather than Liverpool or Real Madrid.
I don't think he goes Real Madrid. I don't think he's able to go there. Not now. He can go next year, but at the moment, I don't think they've got the quota to be able to entertain him unless they get rid of one of the superstars at the moment.
It would be next summer. So they'll
the next in. Well, they've got to make way for him because at the moment they can't take Bellingham.
But sorry, what I'm saying
that would be my first choice. Though, Real Madrid.
Oh, Real Madrid.
That's your first choice.
Real Madrid. Without doubt,
for sure.
And like Darren's saying, if they're out of the Champions League anyway, there's absolutely no chance I'm going to Liverpool.
It's always easier to talk about the sides that are struggling because there's always more conversations to be had about how things have gone wrong and how they fix them. For Nottingham Forest, though, do you think we're going to be looking at this as a bright spark in a difficult season, or are we going to be looking at this as something that's lifted them? You're quite categorically on.
Yeah.
This is just a bright spot.
I think it's a bright spot. What the fans are delighted to see. You know, they want to come to the Premier League. They knew it would be tough. It's going to go right down to the wire. I believe they get relegated. I really do. But it is a bright spark in a very disappointing season.
They were good, though, and they did look like the Forest that we saw play against Premier League sides in the FA Cup last season. We saw more of that. Is it about the difficulty of sustaining that throughout a 38-game season?
I think so. Well, I talked about, getting up, Liverpool getting up for the Man City game, Forest to get up for a home game against, City ground bouncing to get Liverpool there. That game down the years, it's been historic, brilliant occasions. For them to get up for that game is fine, but they need consistency now. They need to bounce on to the next one and try and put some back-to-back wins together to give themselves any chance, but I think they'll struggle. I really do.
I think in line with my appearance today, I thought that Emmanuel Dennis, the striker who scored goals for Watford last season. I thought he should have started. I saw the lineup. I thought, why is he not starting? And then the guy who started instead scored a winning goal. So.
Yeah. Formerly of Liverpool, although he never made a senior appearance. Exactly. It always is the way that players come back to haunt their former clubs. So Nottingham Forest looking for a little bit of consistency, but there are lots of teams down at the bottom who've got